This is a presentation about all the covers I made at Boston, and it's a lot of fluff and stuff and fun stuff, and some other things that I found that are more serious at the end.
How many things did you bring with you like this to be canceled if you could?
I brought a bunch of things from home. Some of the things I brought were like stamps that I had duplicates of and various postcards that didn't fit anywhere into my collection. So I figured, okay, I'll see if I can try to have these canceled. And then I'll just make a whole album titled Boston 2026 so that I don't have these items that don't fit anywhere in my collection. They'll have a place to live in a Boston album. The first time I ever went to a first day ceremony was back in the 90s at Interpex in New York with my father. And this is a cover I got signed by the stamp designer. It was stamps from Palau. Okay, so here's my obligatory cats on stamps with BP, who there's a saga about him in Boston because he is a diabetic and I couldn't find anybody to board him. And he would have to go to the veterinary boarding and he would just be terrified the whole time. So I ended up going to Boston 3 days as 3 day trips going on Amtrak and the bus. So he was the reason why I had to do Boston not as a hotel stay, but instead as 3 day trips. So I had to give him, some credit somewhere in this presentation. So there he is. Before Boston occurred, there was a lot of chatter on collector boards about, whether there would be a lot of dealers there, what the prices the dealers would need to charge in order to monetize their tables, and because the table fee was quite expensive. I didn't know whether I would find anything, so I thought, you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm not going to worry about, whether there are only going to be high-end dealers there, or whether I'll be able to afford anything. Taking inspiration from this Palau cover that I got at Interpex way back when, I decided I was going to try and collect the cancels from the postal administrations that were coming to Boston. And then another thing was, while I was looking for listings of cats on stamps, I noticed that while there are some countries who issue a tremendous amount of new issues, there are a significant number of countries which have stopped issuing stamps. I think, it has gone down by about 20%, in terms of not total stamps issued, because the total stamps issued of new issues are tremendous. You can see the evidence of that by how big the Scott catalog is getting, how thick the volumes are getting, and how much more volumes there are compared to previous years. But there's actually fewer countries that are issuing stamps. The number of countries has gone down, probably 50 something countries less in the past 5 years than there used to be. And then, just as an aside, to explain further the reasons for some of the things I did, pictures of the various things I collect across the hobby. There's naturally cats on stamps. I have some Zeppelin covers. I do Polish stamps and coins. I do military medals, which are not philatelic, but then I do military history on stamps. And then I just showed this Togo souvenir sheet because it happens to have the same UN medal that I own as a medal as a stamp. Boston. Boston had 21 postal administrations, but some of them I wasn't able to find because the partitions were confusing at Boston. That's a whole other thing. Here's a picture of the sign welcoming you to the convention center at Boston. And I mention again that BP, my cat, his insulin dosing schedule dictated my stamp show attendance. At Boston, the Scott and the Lynn Stamp News, the publisher, gave out this free item. It was an official passport, and it was designed for you to collect stamps and cancels from the postal administrations who would be in attendance at Boston. And each administration had its own page so that you could collect everything into a nice little passport. Now, sometimes I didn't put the stamps in the passport, but I did try and get a cancel on each page in the passport. And I did that for the specific reason because sometimes when you cancel on top of the stamp, the impression of the cancel isn't clear and you can't read what the cancel says. So Sometimes you'll see cancels in this book without a stamp under it. And then the United States Postal Service was offering as a freebie postcards. You could take your picture and have it printed on various themed postcards. So this is one of the postcards that I had done at Boston of me. There were 21 postal administrations in attendance at Boston. I think some of them didn't come, or then later on, you'll find out that some of them, they didn't have their canceling devices. They got lost in delivery service and lost in the mail and lost by the airline. So that's a whole other thing. Here we go. The first cover I had made. And some of the covers I made, I used them using covers that were already previously canceled. And this was one of them. And this was Isle of Man. And I added these Isle of Man cat stamps to a previously done Royal Geographical Society cancel cover. So the new cancel is on the cat stamp and then below on the bird stamp. And then the passport page was below. Then this one I did for Bermuda. And Bermuda didn't require me to purchase any new stamps. They allowed me to use their cancel and cancel it for me with these vintage Queen Elizabeth stamps. So it was a postcard that I had of Hamilton Dock in Bermuda that I got from Postcard Club before the show. And then these Bermuda stamps that I already owned, and they allowed me to cancel them at Boston. Okay, and then this was the Bermuda passport page, which I did use a stamp for. Okay, and then this was Spanish Andorra, because the administration for Spain were canceling for both Spain and for Andorra. So I found these covers previous to the show with pictures of scenes of Andorra and Andorra folk dancers, and then I had them canceled at Boston with the Andorra flag stamp that they were offering at Boston. And then here's the passport page for Spain with both the Boston cancel for Andorra and the Boston cancel for Spain. This was Greenland. So I brought some stamps from Greenland from home and then purchased a new Greenland stamp because that's what they required of me. So I have some vintage Greenland stamps, a new Greenland stamp, and then I went and onwards to the UN booth and had it canceled again with a UN Boston cancel. Okay, and then I used a Boston themed postcard for this. And then this is Greenland's passport page. And then these were Ukrainian stamps. I found a set of Ukrainian train stamps. I brought them from home and then purchased additional Ukrainian stamp at their booth. And then I used the Benjamin Franklin themed postcard to go along with the bicentennial theme. And that was Ukraine. Okay, then I did an additional Ukraine. But this is another postcard I have using Ukrainian stamps. And then I thought this postcard was a cute postcard. It said, "Consider the postage stamp. Its usefulness consists in the ability to stick to one thing." It got cropped. The overlay of the other image blocked the legend on the postcard. Okay, and then this was how the Ukrainian cancel looked on the page. And you can see from the way they canceled on the stamps that you wouldn't be able to make out the cancel on the stamps because, I don't know, it just didn't get a good image. So there's a good image of it in the passport book. This was a card I did at Fiji and the United Nations. And the reason why I put this Liberia victory medal on was because Fiji was offering a cover that had a companion designed souvenir sheet with the Commonwealth victory medal, but I forgot to buy that cover. So it's like I got the cancels done in one line and there was another line to buy the stamp. And I somehow, in the craziness that was Boston, forgot to buy the one that goes with it. But anyway, that was that one. And then this one is the Fiji cancel in the passport. Okay, and then this one was Georgia, and it has Georgia and the United States. cancels on it, and the Georgia passport page. And then this one is from the Faroe Islands. This one I used the Paul Revere House in Boston, Boston theme card, and got it canceled by the Faroe Islands. Okay, and then this is the Faroe Islands, their Boston commemorative cancel and their date cancel. This is my United States passport, but it's supposed to have two different images, but for some reason it does not. But that was the Stamp Collectors Day station cancel. Now these are my cats on stamps. Then here is an art card with a cat on a roof. And I had that done with Guinea stamps, some that I brought from home, and some Cinderellas of cats, and then a new stamp showing the map of the Republic of Guinea and their Boston 2026 cancel. And then this is their cancel in the passport. Okay, and then this was Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone had a souvenir sheet with cats for sale, so I got that one and got it canceled and got my passport canceled. Then this was Guinea-Bissau, and they had a souvenir sheet also for sale, so I purchased that one, got their Boston commemorative cancel from the Stampera booth, and then got that canceled in the passport too. Then this was India's issue, and I got an Indian puppet stamp canceled and then used it on this vintage card with Indian caracal cat. And this is the Indian passport stamp, passport page and stamp with different Indian puppets. Okay, now this is Romania. Romania had a really nice multiple color cancel. It like faded from blue to red to blue again, but it's really hard to see on this card, which is another art card with Romanian stamps that I brought from home and a Romanian stamp commemorating the Battle of Yorktown that I got at Boston. And this is another Romanian stamp card that I made with some Romanian stamps that I bought from home. And it has a Romanian Bicentennial stamp that I got at Boston and the cat stamps I brought from home. And that's that cancel.
You bought the Bicentennial stamp in Boston?
Yeah, because they were selling the stamp at the Postal Administration because a lot of the administrations wouldn't give you the cancel for free. You had to buy their stamp and then they would give you the stamp.
Because I recognize the stamps. They're from the 70s.
Yeah, they're from their older stamps. So these I got the stamps again canceled on a United States Bicentennial commemorative airmail card with a Romanian gramophone stamp that I just bought in Boston, and they canceled it for me. And then this is the Romanian passport page, and it shows how nice the Romanian cancel is. You can see a clear image, which, when they canceled it on the stamps, it, kind of came uneven. You didn't really see how, the colors, how they faded from one to another. But they had a nice cancel, Romania.
This wasn't a hand stamp. How did they actually do this?
They all hand stamped them. They all hand stamped them. All the administrations were using hand stamps.
How do they get two colors?
I don't know. They were using, how they have like the pre-inked stamps that are not like you don't use a stamp pad. This was like a little box that had, the ink and the stamping device contained in one unit. Okay, and then this was Togo, which I canceled onto a Massachusetts Lighthouse card. And the Togo tiger stamps, lion stamps rather, was a new one that I bought at Boston, and the other Togo stamp souvenir sheets I brought from home, and they were already CTOs, but they canceled them again for me. Now the United Nations. The United Nations let you self-cancel as long as you had an unused United Nations stamp with you. So I did a lot at the United Nations because it was easy to do. Okay, this was, a United Nations stamp canceled on the Poland Millennium commemorative card back from the 60s. So it's a United Nations anniversary, a Poland anniversary, and then a Boston commemorative cancel. And then this was, I had a spare duplicate of the Polish folk dancers from the region that my family is from. And then I had a spare of the United Nations Poland flag stamps. So I put those two together and made this card. And then here's another one of the 1,000 Years of Poland card with a Boston UN cancel. And then yet another one. This is from the city of Krakow for the 1,000 Years of Poland. And then it has a Boston cancel that I put on as well. Here I had a United Nations Paris card. And then I had extra of the Marc Chagall stained glass window souvenir sheet from the United Nations. So I put it together and gave it a Boston commemorative cancel. At the Boston show, while I was waiting in the line for the signing of the United States soccer stamp first day cover ceremony, a man from the souvenir card collectors society came and did something which I thought was really intelligent, because I don't know if I mentioned before that at Boston, for some reason, they put a lot of the societies behind partitions near the exhibits, and it was really hard to see them and really hard to find them. So he came up to the people waiting in line, and he was giving away the souvenir card that the Souvenir Card Society had as a giveaway, with information about the Souvenir Card Society's website on the back. So I had this new material, and I had an extra Marc Chagall stained glass window souvenir sheet. So I figured, oh, why not add a UN cancel on the back? So I did it. And then here are some other United Nations souvenir cards that I brought, and United Nations stamps commemorating stamp collecting. And I canceled them all with the Boston show cancel. Another similar souvenir card with another United Nations stamp and the Boston cancel. Now, this envelope I got from the Helvetia Society, which is the Swiss Collector Society, and they had the Road to Boston Cinderella canceled with their society cancel. So then I had a 25th anniversary of the United Nations souvenir sheet, so I canceled that onto their envelope to make it a little bit more interesting with their Boston commemorative cancel. Dan Reber gifted me these. It had the World Expo first day cancel. Each day of Boston, the United States was offering a different commemorative cancel. So this was the first day cancel. And then these were reply cards that he gave me. So the one side was like a blank with the reply card. So I added some souvenir sheets from the United Nations onto the blank side of the reply card, and I canceled them at the United Nations booth. Okay, then this was United Nations postal stationery. I did a lot at United Nations. I had a lot of spare stamps there, and I had a lot of spare souvenir sheets. So I canceled this one on their postal stationery. And then I had these blank peacekeeping cachet envelopes at home. So I had this stamp with a theme of peace. So I put them together and made a cover, even though it's not 1988 anymore. Then here's another one that I did with a different stamp, with the United Nations flag stamp. And then here's finally the passport page of the United Nations. Then here's a postcard that I did of another one that they had available at the United States Postal Service for you to print, but with a different background. So I took my picture there and then had it canceled with the Boston United Nations cancel. Now, these are what I call my Boston Baked Beans Zeppelin covers. We're going to see. This was a bit of fun that I had. Now, some of the people who went to Boston know that there was a dealer there that was also a member of my postcard club. And one time at the postcard club auction, I got a lot of his, that was sort of, like a mixed box lot for $2. And in these $2 lot, there were a set of cards which were traditional New England recipes on postcards. Because they were a series, and because I didn't know what to use for these Zeppelin stamps so that they would be big enough to have room for them, I canceled all my spare Zeppelin stamps onto these recipe cards. So we have Ukrainian Zeppelin stamps, plus a new Ukrainian tractor pulling a tank stamp, canceled onto the recipe for the New England boiled dinner. Bermuda Zeppelin stamp, canceled by the Bermuda administration, canceled onto the recipe for New England Indian pudding. Central Africa series of stamps showing Zeppelins and airships, canceled onto a card for pumpkin pie. Then I have another pair of Central African stamps showing Zeppelins, canceled onto a different recipe, but it went over the recipe, so I'm not sure which one it was. Then I had Togo done onto another recipe, and Djibouti done onto the one for stuffing. And then here are how the recipe cards look on the picture side. Okay, and that was the tab card for this postcard set. And then this was another one that was Zeppelin's. It was the expanded set of Central Africa done on this Massachusetts schooner card. Then this is Turkey. I had this cover showing a Turkish hotel at home and these stamps commemorating Kemal Ataturk. And then at Boston, I had this new stamp with a Turkish medal canceled onto the older cover. The representative from the Turkey booth actually liked this one and took a picture of it for themselves. This was the envelope that Turkey gave for your purchases, which I thought was a pretty envelope, so I put the picture into the presentation just as a fun thing. And then this is finally Turkey's passport page. Okay, now this is where things got kind of a bit strange. This is the cancels that couldn't happen. I was sad about this because Cyprus was offering for sale a really nice set of cat stamps, and I wanted to get them canceled onto the cover. But the airline lost Cyprus Post's luggage, so they didn't have any canceling device. But then they were offering these complimentary covers, which were already canceled, that they had as giveaways, so I managed to get those. And then they had some little stamp booklets, which were also giveaways at their booth. And then they had a postcard that was a giveaway. But they did sign my passport book to show that I made an effort to try and get their cancels so many times. So I have no cancel for them, only their signature. And then I was disappointed because several countries, because there was one administration representing the Channel Islands and Bermuda and the Channel Islands, Guernsey, the Isle of Man, and another country. And they only managed to have the canceling devices for the Isle of Man and Bermuda. So I wanted to get these Herm Island stamps canceled onto my cover because usually Guernsey will cancel for Herm Island as a local post. So this is a cover that I already have. It shows Herm Island canceled by Guernsey. But this is what I wanted to get done at Boston and couldn't because there was no canceling device for the island of Guernsey at Boston. So I couldn't get my Herm Island locals canceled onto my Guernsey cover. But they did sign my passport book that the canceling devices weren't available on May 27, 2026, and they signed it. Somewhat reluctantly, but they did sign it, so it's in my book. Okay, then these are things that I did that were bicentennial themed because that was the theme of the show. Okay, these were the Road to Boston souvenir sheets of Cinderellas, but I didn't get them at Boston. I got them at Nojix. That was before Boston. And then these are another set of the Cinderellas that I got at Nojix. Then I used this set of bicentennial stamps from Togo and canceled them onto a Felix France bicentennial commemorative card. And then I got a new turtle stamp from Togo to do that. Now, this was a signed card that I got done at the first day ceremony for the United States soccer stamp. So I came across these hand-colored bicentennial postcards, and I got them canceled and signed when I was at the first day ceremony for the soccer stamp because I only had time to attend one first day ceremony. So I did that on the last day, and that was the ceremony for the soccer stamp. And then I got the sports day cancel unsigned because I had a duplicate of that card because that was the cancel they were offering for that day. Boston United States Postal Administration offered 8 different commemorative cancels, plus they did 8 different first days. But you could only get the first day cancel if you used the first day stamp. If you had a different stamp on the day, they would give you a different theme day cancel. Like there was Stamp Collectors Day, there was the Sports Day, there were different theme days. So there were 8 different cancels that were themed cancels and 8 different cancels that were first day cancels. Then this was my signed program from the first day ceremony for the soccer stamp and the first day cover they gave for the soccer stamp ceremony. They did have the first day ceremony for the Heroes of the American Revolution sheet that the United States issued, but that was on the last day of the show. And I wish I could have gotten the Kosciuszko new United States Forever stamp canceled onto this Poland cover, but I wasn't able to do it. So the Boston Sports Day cancel had to suffice because I wasn't there for the right day. This is another one that was done on the Stamp Collectors Day, which was the Monday of the show. And I totaled up to the current present postcard rate on this bicentennial commemorative postal stationery. Oh, and then this is another one that I did. It's supposed to be me on a stamp, but I'm telling you, it looks like more like Paul Revere than me. It didn't turn out to look very much like me, but that's supposed to be me on a stamp from the United States Postal Service postcard making photo machine. Here is another one, and this was the first day issue of the Boston Show stamp that I got from the first day cover society table already made because the USPS wasn't selling singles of this stamp at the show. You had to buy the whole sheet. So I bought just the cover instead. And then this is another one, the Figures of the American Revolution, the one that I said that has the Kosciuszko in with the series of stamps on the sheet. This one has Abigail Adams for the first day cancel. And I got that from the First Day Cover Society because, again, they weren't selling singles. They did a first day ceremony in April because they actually issued the stamps in April, but then they did another ceremony for them at the last day of the Boston show. So, and then this was a cover I did, Bicentennial themed, that was done for the original Bicentennial. And then I got them canceled by Spain with their Boston cancel. Then these are the things that I got from different society tables. Now, I told you I shopped at the First Day Cover Society table before because a lot of the covers, the stamps either weren't available as singles or I wasn't there for the right day to get the cancel. So this was the post-crossing stamp. And this one was the favorite stamp day because this was actually done by voting. You know, they voted for a favorite stamp and nobody knew who the favorite stamp was going to be until they unveiled it at Boston. And it turned out that the Mr. Rogers stamps were selected. So those were the covers for that. And then this was the Stamp Collectors Day first day stamp. They did the American Bison stamp for the stamp collectors. But again, they weren't selling this one as a single, so I got it from the First Day Cover Society as a cover instead. Then this is the American Topical Association, the covers that the cancels they were offering at Boston. So there's the What is Your Topic one, and then the Boston theme cancel with the Minuteman. And these are the American Topical Association Cinderellas they had for Boston. It has a picture of the Boston skyline. Okay, and then the Allied Military Government Collectors did a souvenir sheet for the show, and they canceled one into my passport, and they had another one. It was canceled onto their copy of their most recent journal. So that was a nice gift from them. And then the Christmas Seal Society produced a sheet for Boston commemorating the Boston Tea Party with Santa Claus included, and they were giving that away at their booth at the show. This is where I get into my serious material. So after all the fluff and stuff, I did manage to find some serious items. There was a man from Finland and he was selling $5 covers. Like I said, there was chatter before the show that, some dealers wouldn't be attending or they may have to bring only their higher priced material in order to, make it economically work, giving the booth fees at Boston. So I didn't know whether I would find any affordable material. So that's why I leaned hard into getting things canceled by the postal administrations. But I did find something pretty good after all. In the $5 box, I found these four postal stationery covers from a person who was imprisoned in Offlag Murnau, which was a officer's prisoner of war camp in Germany. And this particular person was a lieutenant in the Polish army who was captured in 1939 during the initial invasion of Poland by Germany. Okay, and it's these letters from this man to his wife. His wife happened to live in a city called Sohachev in Poland. Okay, so I got four of these covers for $5 each, $20 total. And I primarily got them because inside the covers, there were these parcel receipts, which I didn't take a picture of. And they were like these labels that are prisoners were given instructions to have. If they wanted somebody to have them, send them a small parcel. The person should use the specific address form in order for them to get their parcel, because otherwise their parcel, if they didn't use the specific address form, they might, just take the parcel and distribute it, the contents of the parcel, like generally, not to the specific person. So within these, included as part of these postal stationery, there were these parcel slips. So I got them for the parcel slips. And, I wanted one parcel slip, but then I noticed that there were four covers written by the same person. And if they stayed together as a grouping of four covers for so many decades, I wasn't going to split them. So I bought all four. So this is the writer of these letters, this Ludwik Kościelski, and this was a brief history of his military service before he got imprisoned at Murnau. His unit was mobilized in Poznan in August of 1939. Then when Poland got invaded, there was a battle by this river called Bzura. There was a battle of the Bzura in World War I. In World War I, when the Germans attempted to invade Warsaw, they attempted to capture Warsaw and were unsuccessful. The Polish army mounted its defense in the area of this Bzura River in 1914. So when they got invaded in 1939, a lot of the officers having previous experience in defending this point in 1914, because some of your old guard, still veterans, were still attached to the army or were remobilized in 1939 when they got invaded. This was a logical point to defend the Germans' land advance towards Warsaw. So there was another battle of the Bzura in 1939, but that one was unsuccessful. They were not able to defend, and Warsaw was ultimately captured. He participated in this battle. Then he was wounded by shrapnel. Then his unit sort of dispersed because in 1939, Poland never officially surrendered. Individual units surrendered, individual cities surrendered. For example, Belgium. The King of Belgium officially surrendered to Germany. There was no such for Poland. So a lot of the army dispersed and attempted to run away to the west. And a lot of them were successful because, they ran away and then they attached themselves to the French army and fought with them. And then when the French capitulated, they ran further and then they ended up in the United Kingdom and ended up, creating units that were under the auspices of the government in exile in London, because Poland had a government in exile in London in the United Kingdom. But be that as it may, his unit dispersed. He tried to run away. He tried to return to Poznan, where his unit had originally been mustered, but he got captured there, and then he went to the prisoner of war camp. Okay, that was that. When he was a prisoner of war, he joined the camp underground, and another person in the camp had an issue. He was accused of shooting a German spy summarily without this spy having undergone trial. And then the Germans wanted to have have a trial for him and seek the death penalty against this specific lieutenant, the camp underground decided that they should hide this person inside the camp. So they had to dig a hideout for him. And this Lieutenant Kościelski was one of the people who helped dig a hideout for this person. It took them 2 months to dig the hideout, and they used just rudimentary items they had around the camp, and they successfully hid this person for 8 weeks. But then he was ultimately discovered, but he didn't get the death penalty. He was acquitted. So there was additional correspondence for this person. And where the additional correspondence for this person that he wrote lives is there are cards and postal stationery written by this same Lieutenant Ludwig Kościelski, and they are in the possession of the Museum of Sohachev region and the Bzura battlefield. So they have some of his cards. Here is the card that the museum has in its possession. And you can see that it's written in the same handwriting by the same person, written to his same wife, the same address. My correspondence that I found is part of a series of correspondence written by this man to his wife, some of which is in possession of this museum. This gives me material for another presentation. I need to translate this postal stationery and figure out what's going on with these cards, some of which are in possession of a museum and some of which are possession of me, written by this same person as a series of correspondence during the war to his wife. Okay, and that ends my presentation.
You're a busy little bee. Did you have any time to look at